Your calendar. Probably the most boring productivity tool in your productivity toolbox. And yet, it is the most powerful productivity tool that you have, simply because it's never going to lie to you. It will show you your 24 hours in the day or the 168 hours in the week, and you've got to decide how you are going to allocate your work to the time that you have available. Now, you can tell how boring the calendar is simply by the lack of choice we have out there. For most people, I'm guessing when you're at work, you're using Microsoft Outlook Calendar. For many others, you're probably using Google Calendar. And then, of course, there is Apple Calendar. Now, there are a few third-party applications out there. Fantastical is probably one of the more famous ones, but there is Sunsama, if I remember correctly, and there's possibly a few others. Now, a few of the task managers out there are trying to incorporate calendars into their apps. Todoist has done this. Apple Reminders allows you to manage your calendar from it, sort of. And then there are a few others, but what they're doing is they've built that on the back of either Outlook Calendar, Google Calendar, or Apple Calendar. So really, we have three choices. Now, I'm going to share with you today how I'm using Apple Calendar, because it's the one I've been using for almost 25 years now, and I think I've got the hang of it. I know how it works. So let's get started. Now, with Apple Calendar, you can bring in your Microsoft Outlook calendar, your Google Calendar, or just use iCloud as your calendar. Now, I'm using a kind of quirky system here. I both have my back-end Google Calendar, which is how my company operates. We use the Google Workspace program. But for my personal life, I'm using iCloud for my calendar because I just like the way Apple Calendar works. One of my like annoyances with Google Calendar is an accidental tap here or an accidental tap there, and suddenly you've created an event that you now have to click to come out of. You can't duplicate tasks just by simply tapping Option and then dragging, which you can with Apple Calendar. Of course, you can do that with Outlook and you can do that with Fantastical. But that's one of the great things about the calendar. I can just duplicate events going around my calendar, because often I do. I will have like walking my dog Louie, as you can see on my calendar. You know, sometimes I have to move that around. Sometimes I delete one because my wife takes him. But there are other things that I may want to duplicate and move around. And all I have to do is press Option and then click and then just drag it to where I want it to be. Now, going into the calendar and the mechanics of using a calendar, one of the things that I highly recommend that you do is when you're doing a planning session, whether you're planning the day or you're planning the week, the first thing you should do is remove any conflicting appointments. You cannot be in two places at once. And I've seen people with 3 or 4 different events all at the same time. You cannot be at all those events. Pick one and delete the others. Now, if you don't want to delete them, but it's something that you want to just know about, then sure, just move it to the top of your calendar into what's called the all day section. Now, one of the things about this, the great things about the all day section is you can actually put in whatever you want to put in there. Now, as you can see here on my particular all day section, I've got in red my content production timeline. So on Mondays, I post my LinkedIn newsletter. On Tuesdays, I post my Substack and the first YouTube short. Wednesdays is my learning note. Thursday is the actual YouTube video. Friday is my weekly newsletter. Saturday is my Substack long. And I've just realized that I'm posting 7 pieces of content every week because on Sunday, I post my podcast. So that's my content calendar. It tells me what I'm supposed to be posting on what days, and it can get a bit confusing. What you see here in blue is what I consider to be my personal. So blue is personal, and I keep up there when I've got some bills to pay. So as you can see in here, I've got my Samsung, I'm very good, I paid my Samsung card yesterday. I also put in there that the cleaner is here. Now this is where it could very easily be a conflict. She comes between 9:30 and 11:30 on a Tuesday and a Friday. Now I could put that into the time section, but it's just going to create conflict in my calendar. I'd have two events at the same time. On Tuesday, I'm writing between 9:30 and 11:30. On Friday, I'm also writing between 9:30 and 11:30. All I need to know is that at 9:30, the cleaner's going to be here. I just have to let her in. That's it, and I can get back to my writing. It's not an appointment as such. It's just specific information that I need to know about. Now, as with all calendars, within Apple Calendar, you can also change the view that you're looking at. So for example, you can change it to a day view, which has just today. It's just going to show you your appointments for the day. You can show the week view, which is my preferred view because I can see the full landscape of the week. You can have a month view, which is usually a bit messy because it shows everything into a small square. And of course, you can even go into a year view, and within Apple Calendar, that's just a matter of where you can actually just pick and choose the year. I prefer to work from the week view simply because the week view is where I can see, as I mentioned, the full landscape of my week. Now, you can also bring out the side menu, and you can probably see here that I've got I've got two calendars. I've got my work calendar here, which is CPI. And for the demonstration purposes, I've turned off the coaching side. I've turned those off, but this is my kind of professional side. And then in my personal iCloud, I have personal exercise coaching Todoist. Now, I don't actually use the exercise now as a separate color because as you can see on my calendar here, at 4:30 every day, it just comes up as exercise. And that's all I need to know because I keep a track of my exercise in my journal. So you can pull things out there. While we're in the side menu, you'll notice that there is a kind of inbox. If you get any invitations, now this is likely to come through a Google Calendar rather than Apple Calendar. But if you get any invitations, they are going to drop in there and you'll see a little button like a number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, however many appointments that you've been invited to, they're going to be showing up there. Also, if you go down to the bottom, and this is something that I actually quite like. I'm normally looking at my calendar from the big screen rather than a laptop screen. So what I like to do is to drag up from this line down at the bottom here and have 3 months of calendar showing. Now in this case, if I show you the 2, but you can actually just pull this up and you can get 3 months showing. So I generally have 3 months on the big screen. Here on my laptop, I just have the current month. I just drag it down to the bottom and it will show me my current month. So that's what you can do in the side menu. You can also turn these on and off by just unchecking them. Now, one question I'm frequently asked is, how do you change the colors in Apple Calendar? That's simple. You just right click on it and you can come up with all these colors. You can actually now tap custom color and create a customized color, but it's only going to work within that. I can't go into, say, a work related task here, right click it and change the color, because it won't allow me to do that. But what it does allow me to do is change the calendar. So if you want different colors, you do need to set up a separate calendar for Apple Calendar. So that's the overview of Apple Calendar. I just find it's simple, it does the job, and it works superbly. As I mentioned, I don't bring in Apple reminders simply because I like my calendar to be real and true. Tasks can either be done or not done on the day, even if they're really urgent. And most of my writing, as you can see, I time block focused work sessions. So in my calendar here, I've got my writing time on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Wednesdays is video recording day. And also, if you can see in yellow here, or orange, you can see that I've always scheduling time for communication and admin. Simply because if I don't, those are the 2 areas of my work that will backlog rapidly if I don't manage to keep on top of it. It's just one of the worst places to backlog if you're not keeping an eye on it. So those are that's how I organize my calendar. Now I know it's an unusual timeline simply because I live on the other side of the world. I live in the Far East, and most of my clients are either in Europe or North America. So I have to work at odd times. My afternoon essentially is what you would be doing in the evening if you're working a more conventional work day, I should say. But one thing I would say about managing your calendar is this is something where I would highly recommend that you start your day. You look at your calendar because that's going to tell you how much time you've got for the tasks that you may think you've got to do today. If you look at your calendar and you've got 7 hours of meetings and you've got a 1-hour lunch appointment where you need 30 minutes to get to the place and 30 minutes to get back, you're not going to do many tasks that day because your calendar is blocked. There's no point in seeing 8 hours of meetings or calendars and lunch appointments and then thinking, I've got 30 tasks to do. Well, it isn't going to happen because your calendar is staring at you. It's telling you you do not have time to do your tasks today. Now, you have a couple of choices here. You can reschedule some of your tasks in reminders, or you can reschedule some of your appointments. Maybe there's a couple that you can say, actually, we don't need that meeting today. I'm going to postpone it to next week, and you can reach out to the people that you have an appointment with. But this is something that you've got to look at on a daily basis, particularly if you're working in an environment that means that people are scheduling appointments on your calendar without you knowing about it. And by the way, one thing I didn't mention is you can add accounts very simply in here by just going to accounts in settings and then tapping the plus button and then picking whatever calendar it is that you're using. Sorry, just wanted to aside on that one because I know people are going to be asking me. You can do that here. Now I'll find out how many people have got to this point in the video. So some of the things that you really want to be watching out for your calendar. This is the driver of your day. It is the most important productivity tool that you have in your productivity toolbox. First step when you're planning the day is to look at your calendar to see how much time you've got available for your tasks. The second step then would be to open up reminders, look at your list for today and ask yourself, is this realistic based on how much time I have available for doing tasks? If it's not, move off some of the tasks to another day so that you do have a realistic day. The final one then would be to prioritize your tasks in reminders. And if you don't know how to do that, then this video, I will put a link to a video I did on reminders below so you can check that out. And incidentally, if you want to learn more about how to set up a 100% complete Apple productivity system, then I have just updated my Apple productivity course for the new operating 26 and iOS 26. You can learn more about that in the show notes below. So overall, Apple Calendar is a superb application. It's there, it's solid, it works brilliantly on your phone. And if you are using Apple Calendar so that you have complete control over your calendar, I should point out that you may have to click on the ICS file that comes in most meeting invitation emails. That will then allow you to put that into your calendar. But also Apple Mail is very smart these days, and it will actually tell you at the top of the email that it's detected an appointment. Do you want to add that to your calendar? And it will add it to your calendar. I should also point out in the new editions of, and this came out about 2 years ago, if you look on the top right here of my screen, you've got Korean Standard Time because that's where I am at the moment. But I can actually change this to other times if I wish. You can go in and edit it. Ireland is another area where I often work from. So Ireland is another one where I can just switch my calendar to that time. I've got Central Time, Pacific Time, and Eastern Time, which relates to the US. So you've got a lot of options there. You've also got a search box where you can go in and search for particular appointments that you may have with people. I mean, Apple Calendar is a solid built-in calendar. It's been around for 25 years plus, so you think that Apple have got it right, and they do have it right. I hope this little brief outline of how Apple Calendar works has helped you. If you want to learn more about my current experiment using only Apple's productivity tools, then this video up here is certainly the one to watch next.